Tarik Skubal just made the Cincinnati Reds look really smart when it comes to Hunter Greene.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Reds. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Steven Offenbaker. His name's Jeff Carr. We love baseball. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We love it so much. We've been talking about them for a combined nearly 16 seasons in podcast form, and we love talking about these baseball things with you guys. Thanks so much for being here. On today's show, a little bit later, we're going to talk about some of the names that have come off the board, a potpourri of sorts. Lots of little things have happened over the week that we're going to get into a little bit later in the show. We're also going to spend some time today predicting which hitter ends up being the number 2 hitter in the Reds lineup in 2026. The answer, not as straightforward as you might think. We've got that coming up for you here in just a couple minutes. But where we are going to start today is with something that we don't get to say very often, and that is the Reds were smart with something that they did. In fact, they were very smart when you take into account some recent happenings in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about the Hunter Greene contract and why it was such a good deal for this team. And in fact, Jeff, that's where we should get started, because you look at the deal that Hunter Greene signed, you look at the fact that it created a relatively team-friendly contract for the duration of what would have been Hunter Greene's arbitration years. It got you a little bit extra on the back end with a free agent year or two of Hunter Greene. And you look at those numbers and you look at that contract, and then you put yourself in the front office of the Detroit Tigers, who just absolutely got slammed in their arbitration hearing with Skubal. Skubal getting a record arbitration deal of $32 million. $32 million. $32 million. I'm going to say it one more time. $32 million.
Most ever. Yeah.
Most ever for not only
through arbitration. Yeah.
Not only a pitcher, but a player in arbitration. Crazy amount of money. Nick Krall looks like the real hero of this story when you look at those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter Greene's new contract began back in 2024, going all the way through 2029, if you count the team option that he has for $21 million in 2029. And I think that for once, the Reds did a thing that we won't see again in a good way. Not a not a thing, we're talking about position players pitching, or, somebody threw the slowest pitch ever, or something goofy like that. Like, this is the smartest thing that any team has done, and no team will do again, because the Reds did two things with this. They signed a guy who everybody knew was going to be their ace for far less than ace money. And they did it before it was evident that he was going to live up to that reputation, because the Reds haven't really done that with players. They kind of wait till it's too late to start with them. We go back to what they did with Luis Castillo, where all reports were they didn't even approach him about a contract negotiation until his contract year was upon them. And so they wait too long with these things. And we're seeing Tarik Skubal get $32 million. Paul Skeens for the Pirates has to be rubbing his hands together and just licking his lips. And he's really excited about what's going to happen for him in arbitration, because it's going to be even more than that. And you consider the fact that Hunter Greene would be in the middle of this. And while he might not be in the $32 million range, he'd certainly be making a lot more than $8.3 million this year, which is what his contract is due to pay him. And the way that it's going to progress, he's going to make $15 million in 2027 and then $16 million in 2028. So then if the Reds do not pick up his club option for 2029, they will have never paid him more than $16 million in one season. That is a crazy thing to think about when you consider where we expect him to go in the next couple of years. And that just shows how smart the Reds were for this, but underscores how rare it is, and how I almost think it's impossible that we will see this happen, not just for the Reds, but for any other team.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, looking at the rest of the pitchers on this staff, Lodolo's not signing a deal. He's going to ride out his arbitration years.
Yep.
Andrew Abbott's not signing a deal. He's going to ride it out, because the impacts are this. Like, even though, Lodolo and Abbott's numbers, we're not saying they're Skubal numbers. We're not saying that those guys are performing like,
but they're worth investing.
Skubal has.
They are.
But the results that Andrew Abbott has put up, if Skubal's getting 32, Abbott could get 20. That's not a stretch. Lodolo could get 20. That's not a stretch. Both of those guys will end up getting more in arbitration than Hunter Greene is getting through the contract that he now has in place with the Reds. And you can bet that both of those players' agents are like, oh, no. We have some deals to make. Those contracts
Matumbo insurance ad. No.
Here's the piece of it that I think has dramatic ramifications for not only the Reds, but for baseball. And that is, you look at that contract that Skubal got, you look at the $32 million.
His final year of arbitration.
All of the owners throughout baseball that aren't the Mets, that aren't the Dodgers. This is just another piece of the puzzle as to why all of those owners, not the Mets, not the Dodgers, are going to be willing to scrap an entire season of Major League Baseball to completely reset the economic market of this sport, because those guys are all looking around. I mean, it just as if you put yourself in the Castellini shoes, and I really don't want to, but let's just for a second do that and think about the fact that, if they hadn't signed this deal, Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott would all be going through the arbitration process together at the same time. And each one of those guys could be getting $20 to $25 million. And now you're talking about $75 million in 3 players for a team whose payroll, if you're lucky, if you get to 150, right?
And so they wouldn't have all 3. And so that is the biggest thing with this Hunter Greene deal, because Nick Lodolo just started arbitration this season. And then Andrew Abbott will go to arbitration next offseason. And the interesting thing about this is how baseball economics will change with the new CBA and what that will look like, because we expect them to change in some way. How that affects arbitration and all that other stuff, that remains to be seen. But it's going to change after 32 million, because it was 32 million to Tarik Skubal this year. Juan Soto got 31 million a couple of years ago. Paul Skeens is looking at a ridiculous payday coming up here soon. And the whole point with this is the player, as long as they don't ask for like the just most ridiculous number you could ever think of, the player can just about ask for whatever they want. And then they defend themselves in an arbitration case based on their performance. Tarik Skubal might have been able to ask for more, as much as we talked about the weird difference of 19 million what the Tigers offered and 32 million what he countered with, just the gap that was. No one thought that the Tigers would win that case. And so all of that being said, like, things are going to change financially for that. And it makes me wonder one other thing, because Lodolo and Abbott are past the point where you can say the Reds have an opportunity here to get them before they're good. Like, they really showed that they took a step forward last year, and I expect them to just have another good year this year. And then they're just not going to sign any sort of deal that you're like, oh, that's kind of team friendly. What about Chase Burns? Is Chase Burns at the point that you could do this? Because obviously it's all potential right now with him. There's not a production that he has to argue with on the contrary, but his agent could just literally hold on to the Skubal thing and say, look, the potential that Chase Burns has, we ain't going to sign.
And that's where you're going to land, because you're right. If you were going to do it with Burns, it would need to be right now.
Yeah.
But if you were representing Burns, if you were his agent, what would your advice be? My advice would probably be bet on yourself.
Yep.
Because either way, you're going to get paid through the arbitration process. Bet on yourself. Why would you sign this deal? This goes back to the things we heard from Scott Boras. God, we're gonna like these are the things we heard
about this guy.
These are the things we heard from Scott Boras when he talked about the possibility of Elly De La Cruz signing a Hunter Greene type contract. And what Boras said at the time was, why would I want a player to do that? No player has ever benefited from doing that. Now, from a pitcher standpoint, you can see, well, pitchers are more likely to have an injury. There's things that could derail their career arms are a funny thing when they've been hurt, all those things, right? Like there is an element of, do you want to bet on yourself, or do you want the stability of knowing that even if you blew out your elbow today, you're going to get paid for 4 more years or whatever that number is.
Right.
I just can't envision a scenario where Chase Burns, or even Rhett Lauder for that matters, representation is like, you want the stability here. You want to take this contract, even though you could end up pitching for where you could make $20 to $25 million. You should go with the stability. I just can't imagine anybody's representative saying that that's a good idea for them.
No, and I don't think that there's ever going to be another deal, because like we always get these questions in the offseason, right? Like, should the Reds sign like name top prospect who's about to be called up? Like, should they sign him to a long-term deal now? Do a Jackson Churio type deal?
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder that how many players are saying yes to that, because it's not as if it's all on the Reds to either offer or not offer, and then it just doesn't happen. It's like there is the other side of that too. Do the players buy out their arbitration as well? Because arbitration seems to be working for the guys that just absolutely go crazy. And if you're a guy like Chase Burns, you have that ability to go crazy. The whole thing with this, though, is that it just underscores how smart the Reds were whenever they signed Hunter Greene to a long-term deal. And I think that we will just continue to see dividends from that deal, even as soon as the season. But I know this, Steve, as we move forward, there's been a lot of talk about the lineup, and we feel like we've got our cleanup guy. The number 2 spot in the lineup was a huge issue for the Reds last year, and it feels like there's a couple of guys who could take over that spot. They got to prove it, but are we missing somebody? Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your special criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. Because as we always say on this podcast, hope is not a strategy. Have a good strategy with Indeed. Spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job to the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. Thanks for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine and making us your first listen. Look, you live your team every day, and now we invite you to take it up a notch. Go ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Go to LockedOnReds.supercast.com to learn more. You get an ad-free audio feed. You get access to a members-only Discord and so much more for $5 a month or $50 for a whole year. That's LockedOnReds.supercast.com, or just follow the link in the description of today's episode to learn more. All right, Steve, when it comes to this lineup, we talked a lot about the cleanup guy, or at least the guy who follows Ellie De La Cruz in the lineup being of paramount importance, something they need to fix this year. But I think that the other part of this lineup that was egregious will come from an internal fix. You and I have both talked about, we feel like early on in the season, we'll see Noelvi Marte batting second. Then if he progresses well enough, we could see Matt McLain take over that spot later on in the year. Maybe you look at Noelvi Marte batting fifth, or, whatever that might be. But as I was having a conversation the other day with my pal Matt, he had mentioned something to me that I hadn't considered. And I thought he had a good point, and he kind of swayed me on this a little bit. If Sal Stewart is everything that we and people who project things in baseball think he can be, Sal Stewart should be the number 2 hitter at some point this season. So by the time the Reds win the division and make it to the playoffs in 2026, and we're starting playoff game number 1 at Great American Ballpark, batting second for your Cincinnati Reds will be
Noelvi Marte. And I want to tell you why.
Okay.
You look at you look at the projections, and God help us with the projections. We're gonna have to do a show or at least a segment. The projections hate the Cincinnati Reds, and they have for a while now. And sometimes they've been right, but sometimes they're egregiously wrong. But you look at the projections over at Baseball Reference, one of our favorite websites, and you look at the projections for Noelvi Marte. They actually, of the three guys you mentioned, they project Noelvi Marte to have the best batting average of the bunch, which surprised me. They project Matt McLain to have the most power. They're projecting him for more home runs than Noelvi, but they're projecting a better batting average from Noelvi Marte. Second best batting average of that bunch is Sal Stewart, surprisingly. They're projecting him to be second. Projections aside, I think that Noelvi Marte starts the year as the number 2 hitter. And the Reds are going to find themselves in unprecedented territory, Jeff. Buckle up. This is something I don't know how to even really deal with the fact this is going to be an option. But the Cincinnati Reds are going to have available to them the choice of 3 guys, and you can just play the hot hand at the number 2 spot. And whoever's hitting the best gets to be the number 2 hitter. So if, let's say, Matt McLain goes on a tear for a couple months like he is wont to do, there's your number 2 hitter. And when he cools off, if Noelvi's hot again, he's now your number 2 hitter. And you go on from there. And if Sal Stewart becomes what everybody wants Sal Stewart to be, now he's in the mix. And you can mix it up a little bit depending on who's getting a day off and who's resting and who's playing where and what's going on. It doesn't have to be a static thing. You've got 3 guys that can all perform in a way that warrants them hitting in that spot, and you can rotate them through based on what's happening in the game. Oh my God. I don't even know if that's legal. I don't know that that's a thing you can do.
Right. And I don't think that it's far-fetched to say that Noelvi Marte could be the best of the bunch, because I think that people sleep on the fact that Noelvi Marte had a pretty good strikeout rate last year. He really cut his strikeout rate down and showed that he had good plate discipline. Now, he didn't necessarily buoy that with a higher walk rate. It was just lots of contact and lots of laying off of bad pitches. So if he can add walk rate to that, I think we see him becoming that complete number 2 hitter that the Reds need. If we look over on Fangraphs, which is a website that hates the Reds, which we'll get into more next week, they predict Sal Stewart to be the number 2 hitter in this lineup when it comes to wins above replacement. Elliot De La Cruz is 1, and they have Sal Stewart number 2, just slightly ahead of Matt McLain. I find that really tough because I still expect Matt McLain to have a good year. They do not like Noelvi Marte on Fangraphs. They just don't. They project him to have negative WAR. I don't understand how they do that. Yeah, they don't like him at all. In fact, they project his strikeout rate to be comparable to where it was last year, a little bit higher, but they also don't have him playing a whole lot. I think it's because they believe that Noelvi Marte just doesn't have a position, but I think that he's going to take a hold of right field and just not let go. But I see the arguments on all sides of this, because the Reds just got nothing from the number 2 spot last year. Like, I kind of want to shout this out so everybody knows, because you can, split out the stats based on spots in the lineup. And we can do that based on our friends over at Baseball Reference. According to the league splits, and we do this sometimes, according to the league, the Reds' number 2 hitter was 40% worse than the league average number 2 hitter. It was, in fact, the worst spot in the lineup by a large margin. Everybody else was close to league average. The cleanup spot was actually only 9% below league average. The number 2 spot was 40% below that. Now, part of that was they gave substantial playing time to one Santiago Espinal, and he hit second for a long time so that he could bunt the runner over or something. He didn't do that very well either. But when it comes to how they are looking at this year, I think that this spot's going to be better for them, and that's a reason to believe in this lineup being better.
I agree. And then you look at the lineup as a whole, right? You say, well, Friedel just Friedels. Mm-hmm. That's good. And then you get better production from this number 2 spot, much better production than you got last season, as you just pointed out. And now you've got Ellie with Gino hitting behind him, and the hits go on, and the power goes on, and the 100 home runs goes on and on. I'm getting really excited about this lineup. I'm getting really excited for baseball to start because I want to see this team play. And the top 5 hitters in this lineup for 2026, I think are going to be able to score runs in bunches. And we're going to see the Reds do things we haven't seen them do, which is, get big innings early and get on base early and get things done early, and then let that pitching staff that they've assembled kind of take control of a game. I'm excited to see that in live action and hope that it becomes what it looks like it's going to be on paper. But that number 2 spot is a pivotal piece of them being able to do all those things. And if you look at it, I think it's really possible. And I do believe Matt McLain is going to be much better this year than he was last year. I think the new and improved version of Sal Stewart is going to be really fun to watch develop. And I want to not do that thing we do, Jeff. I want to try and take a step back from Sal Stewart and be like,
right,
let him bat 7th, let him figure it out. And then if he gets hot and is in fact the guy that everybody says he's going to be, then you start making these moves. But don't put that pressure on him in Goodyear. Don't go into spring training thinking like, you're hitting number 2, kid. Get out there and get it done. Let's ease into that. So I think that's where Noelvi Marte comes in. He has the opportunity to start there, and he's in control of his own destiny. He needs to perform. He needs to play. And if he does that, well, man, how's that lineup going to look coming after him with, 2 other guys that warrant conversation at number 2, hitting 7th and 6th and 8th.
Right. And you can set yourself up for almost having, as you turn the lineup over, having 2 or 3 leadoff guys that you feel good about getting on base with and stuff like that, with Matt McLain being down there if he's not hitting second, or, whatever that might be. I think ultimately this sets the Reds up for success based on this competition. I don't feel strongly about any one guy, but I did find it intriguing to have Sal in this conversation because it just feels like there's a high range of probabilities with him. And to say that he cannot do any one thing, I'm not going to do that. But to say that I expect him to do any one thing, I also have a hard time doing that too. But I'd be really happy if you're right and Noelvi Marte takes over, because it feels like it sets up the rest of this lineup for success.
I think it does. And you know what, Jeff? There's a lot of things that have gone on this week in the world of Major League Baseball, kind of a potpourri of little things that we haven't spent much time talking about that we probably should talk about for a minute. So guess what? We're going to do that coming up next.
Tax season does not have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person, or you can connect with them online. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling all of the fine details. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
If you can't watch us here on YouTube, you can take us on the road with you. We are on every single podcasting app there is. If you find one we're not on, you need us to be there, just send Jeff a message. He can probably make it happen for you. You can take us to the gym. You can take us in the car. You can take Jeff down for a long walk by the river. He loves that. Get us in the audio feeds today. Also, that's where the Everydayer Club lives. If you want ad-free Locked On Reds, the Everydayer Club is over there for you. $5 a month, $50 a year. The link for that is down in the show description. All right, Jeff, there's been a lot of things that have happened over the course of this week. They're not giant news stories, but they are of note. Let's start first with our good friend Miguel Andujar, who is now off the board and unavailable to the Cincinnati Reds. I couldn't believe the amount of people that not 30 seconds after Gino signed his contract, I mean, the ink was still smearable on the contract. There were guys in the comment section going, now go get Andujar. If you really are serious, you're going to go get Andujar. Like, can we celebrate Gino for just a second? But no, he's off the board.
Yeah, Miguel Andujar to San Diego for 1 year, $4 million. There's a lot of folks that were like, $4 million. The Reds couldn't afford that. Let me ask you this. If you sign Miguel Andujar, where is he playing? Is he going to play left field? Is he going to be part of that platoon? So Spencer Steer is not going to play in the outfield. Okay. It would just create a weird logjam, I think. And where the thing is that the Reds need is that if they are to go get somebody, it's going to be somebody to help bolster the infield depth. Miguel Andujar is not going to do that because likely if he was going to play on the infield, it was going to be first base. So what's that really help there? So I don't see that as a deal that the Reds needed to make. And I'll be interested to see how he moves forward because he had a good year last year, but he's kind of been a guy that's been up and down. And there's a lot of folks that just see him as a platoon player, as much as we tried to argue the opposite. He would have been a guy for me that I feel like we would have had to squint to see his long-term value if he were added with the Suarez on top of Suarez. So I'm fine with them losing out.
I agree with that. I feel like there was a time in this offseason where going and trying to bring Andujar back made sense. And then that time passed based on how the roster evolved. I'm much happier in having ended up with 49 home runs and Eugenio Suarez than having brought back Andujar. So I'm okay with that. Also signed this week, your friend and mine, Brent Suter, is now a member of another organization. You can scratch that one off the list. I don't think it was ever really a serious thought that they were going to bring him back, but I think the Reds also knew that right up into maybe the beginning of this week, he was sitting out there. And if the Reds had come a call in, Suter probably comes back to Cincinnati. He kind of wanted to be here. The fans liked him. It was a good fit for Suter, but this bullpen is much, much better now for the Reds than it was last year. And they have upgraded from Brent Suter.
I 100% agree on that. I didn't think he had a spot in this bullpen if the Reds were to bring him back. And so it's going to be good to see him get another opportunity somewhere to pitch a lot more. I think it's funny. I was having a text conversation with our Locked On Angels host, John Frisch, about this. And he's like, it really seems like us trading or the Angels trading Brock Burke to the Reds and then the Angels signing Brent Suter. The Angels just lost out on that exchange and that the Reds got the better of the two lefties. So we're actually going to have a conversation with him on that on Monday. I believe it'll be like our final segment of that show. But that'll be kind of a fun one because, yeah, I think he's right. I think the Reds have improved the bullpen enough that Brent Suter I think he could have competed for a spot. I don't know that he would have won a spot. So it's going to be good to see him go somewhere where he does have a guaranteed spot.
And finally, in the potpourri portion of the show, Jeff, you have an interesting angle here on this with the new media structure, the new TV deals being that there are no TV deals, that it's going to be a subscription-based model where either your local cable provider is going to pay Major League Baseball some money to carry a feed for a team, or fans themselves are going to go subscribe to whatever their team is, the Reds.TV, I guess we're doing in the Cincinnati market. You're going to pay your money. You can do it monthly. You don't have to buy the year, which is something the Rangers were doing last year with that other service that they were using. Victory Plus. Yes. Yeah. So now you're in a situation where the fans can pay on a monthly basis to watch their in-market team play. And you feel like this model puts the fans back in control a little bit of what's going on in the sport.
It's very small amount of control. I will definitely say that. It's not as if we are now running the ball club here, but at the same time, in years past, teams have gotten their TV money up front no matter what the next season was going to look like. Didn't matter. They had a pay in January type thing going on so they could budget that and all this other stuff. Now, with this new model with ESPN will take over next year, but with MLB TV and all this other stuff, it's subscription based. So if your team has a good year and people subscribe to watch, then you, as an owner of a baseball team, will have a good year revenue-wise. And if your team has a bad year and you're uninteresting and you're the 2018 or 2022 Cincinnati Reds, you're not going to make as much money because nobody wants to watch the product that you're putting on the field. So this puts the pressure back on the teams to build a team worthy of the fans caring about. And I kind of love that. I don't know exactly to what degree that is. I think it's much smaller than we would like to assume it to be. But I think that this opens up the possibility of like teams looking at themselves in the mirror in February, especially on February 1st, and saying, you know what? We need a middle of the order upgrade. And we have neglected it to this point. And there's this guy who's got good vibes only, and he's available on the free agent market. We should probably bring him in because people will get excited about watching us, and then they'll subscribe to our thing and give us more money by the end of the season. Because had they got that money up front, were they going to do that? I don't know. But I know this. They felt the need to go make that move because of the upcoming model. And I think more teams will ascribe to this theory. And if this is something that Major League Baseball can continue to push forward, we might see owners who were fine to set on, their business acumen in all the guaranteed money that they were going to get from the from the television deals anyway, and not have to put a competitive team together. They might have to change their philosophies a little bit. And I like that.
There's going to be a lot of philosophy changing in Major League Baseball over the next couple seasons, and you can rest assured we'll keep you in the loop the whole way. God, we love talking about finances around here, Jeff, and we're going to be talking about a lot of finances. God help us all. And that
later on, though, we're getting into spring training baseball and talking about baseball. We're going to get out of this finance stuff.
That is where we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen each and every day. We appreciate you so much for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcasting app in all the land. Podcasting network, as a matter of fact, in all the land. If you're on the audio side, go make your second listen of the day, Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered for all things Major League Baseball from a national perspective with a lot of humor and some good information along the way. Go check that out today. For the video, folks, we're going to redirect you right over to Locked On's first ever 24/7 national sports YouTube channel, where all of the experts of the Locked On network, we're going to be talking ball with you 24/7. So stick around. We'll send you there right after this. And so next time, we're going to keep gathering up the news, the notes, the rumors, and the reports to get you ready for the 2026 season and keep you locked on Reds every single day.
I think we're finally entering a safe space where we don't have to talk about finances anymore. We just talk about the game.
Enjoy it while it lasts, because, buddy, it's coming.
Yeah, I know.